Honestly, there were many times in my life where I wondered if I was ever going to be able to break my addictions. But today, I'm breaking a silence that I've carried for years. I'm gonna use my stories, the ugly parts, and the breakthroughs to help you overcome whatever has been binding you. So, just to get things started, I'm gonna cut through the fluff and tell you exactly what you came for. The first point I wanna touch on is the admission of guilt, title that I've given for one of the key points in overcoming any addiction or challenge. So, the first step is be brutally honest, exactly as that title says. You have got to get real with yourself. You are not in control anymore. Denial keeps men weak, and owning the truth is a first step to strength. The second point that I want to touch on is seek help. Now, don't click away. I know how this feels. It's pretty scary, but I've got some things to say and some advice within this. I mean, watching this video alone is seeking help, and that's huge. But the reality is that most men won't get past this point. This is why a lot of people stay within addiction for the rest of their life. When in reality, it's quite easy to escape it in hindsight. But this is why it's so difficult to escape addiction. You have to get through the pride, and you've got to get through the guilt or embarrassment. That's really hard in and of itself. So if you want the fastest path out, tell somebody. Tell somebody you trust. If you can't, or if you're not ready, that's honestly okay. Sometimes this battle is sacred and you've got to go through it alone, and that's really hard to say. But still, in that case, tell God. If you can't tell anybody else, tell God. Which leads to the third point, tap into a higher power. We've already gotten real, you are out of control. So lean on a power that isn't out of control. I just want to say this isn't going to guarantee instant freedom, but without it, it's nearly impossible. And let's just be real about that. For me, my turning point came after my most sincere prayer. I had just been struggling for the longest time. I felt really lost. I felt like my relationship with my family was strained. I felt like I was really going to be stuck within this addiction for the rest of my life. And I couldn't avoid my friends because I had to go to school every day. Couldn't avoid the habits that they carried with them. I couldn't avoid the things that they put me into. And really what it came down to is the only thing that was in my control was the power of prayer. And so one night, as my heart was honestly truly broken, I knelt down to pray. And it took me 3 times. I'd start praying and I was as sincere as I possibly could. And I started asking God for help. I started asking God for a guide or support or some angel, right? Some sort of miracle. And then also my mom would walk in. She'd be like, Gabe, are you going to bed? I'm like, Mom, just give me a second. I got to pray. So by the time I get to the second prayer, I'm like, okay, I'm going to pray again. My mom interrupted. And I'm going to really say the most sincere prayer I possibly can because I'm going to get through this. So I start praying again, and out of an act of hope, I begged God. I said, please send somebody, send somebody. And my mom walks in, interrupts the prayer again. She's like, Gabe, are you not going to go to bed? I'm like, oh my gosh, Mom, let me say my prayers and I will go to bed. You don't even have to worry about it. You know how moms are. So finally she leaves. And I'm like, okay, this is the third time. And if I can't get an answer out of this third prayer, I'm done. So I started begging God. I said, God, please help me. Send somebody. And I said the most sincere prayer. I said a prayer that was just absolutely draining the moisture out of my body through my eye ducts. And my mom walks in again, obviously, interrupting the most perfect moment ever. And I'm like, Mom, I'm saying my prayer. Let me go to bed. It's okay. You don't have to worry about me. And my mom said probably one of the most interesting things. She said, Gabe, I don't know what it is, but I keep feeling this need to come in here and speak to you. She had no idea I was begging for an angel. She had no idea. She had no idea that she was that angel to me. And for some reason, I was so ignorant to the fact that God was trying to help me, because we usually are, that I didn't even think about that. I didn't even associate the fact that God was maybe sending in my own mom. So like 2 weeks later, I was in a seminary class. And in this seminary class, it's a religious class to help you essentially receive a ministerial certificate. Suddenly it just hit me. Out of living this life for so long and living within the guilt that I had placed myself in, the addictions that bound me, when I prayed and I asked for an angel, God quite literally sent me one. And that was super powerful. That really was a hinge point, not just in my journey out of addiction, but in my life. So yeah, I would say that my turning point honestly came after my first most earnest prayer. The fourth one, environment and brotherhood. If your environment is not clean, if the people around you are not mentors to you, if they are not people you want to be like, quite frankly, they're taking from you, not adding upon you. I've had to learn this the hard way. It was really difficult to leave friends that I had since I was just a little kid, but I had to do it because it was necessary for me to quit any addictions in my life. So surround yourself with mentors or brothers that actually lift you up. If your friends are not the kind of men that you want to become, they are pulling you down. Evaluate your environment. Is your room clean? Is your house clean? Is your bed made? Is your room organized? Do you have stuff on your floor? The goal here is to change your environment so much so that your mind has to adapt. It has no other option but to adapt to the surroundings. This is actually a psychology trick. If you don't do it, honestly, you will be stuck in addiction for a long time. And you're gonna have to do this a couple times. But just get committed to reorganizing your environment all of the time. Just ask yourself, how would the fully recovered version of me live? And these little small wins prove that you can win big. Try and keep your room clean for a week. And then after that, try and keep your room clean for a month. And if you can do that, it proves to your mind that you can do a lot more than just clean your room. It proves to your mind that you can keep consistent with habits that are actually hard. It proves to your mind that you can overcome any addiction placed in your path. These little small things create big results in our life. And they also prove to be very powerful as I was trying to overcome all of my addictions. 5, the relapse cycle. If you are experiencing addiction, if you're gonna fight your way through, you're also going to have to get through this lone and dark and dreary world. It's a cycle that I literally call the relapse cycle because it is a cycle of continuously starting over again. Now, just remember, relapses are part of the process. Nobody ever just quits and never has to worry about it again. You're gonna quit cold turkey several times. Remember, you're not a failure. These relapses, they're kind of more like feedback. They're pieces of information that you can analyze and utilize in your process of escaping the addiction. But here's the rule: every relapse, force yourself to quit again. I found myself taking my addictive substances to a very sacred and quiet place and throwing them off a cliff weekly. And you got to do the same thing. It took me 7 years of relapsing and quitting over and over and over again before finally I had one full year where I realized I hadn't even thought about my addictions or those substances or those activities at all. See, you got to understand that quitting doesn't mean that your temptations vanish or that these feelings or these desires vanish. Because Satan is always going to try and tempt you. He's always going to use those things that were weak about you to attack you, to leverage his mission. But honestly, after this whole entire process, my desire to get free, my desire to stay away, my desire to stay closer to God than to the sins that were dragging me down were way greater. My purpose was way greater than that temptation. So I never fell back in. I never wanted to. The temptations came, but it was fairly easy actually to stay away. Even on my worst day, it's impossible for me to go back. 6, the reward is freedom. Life is good now. Back then I was depressed and I felt guilty. And honestly, guilt is one of the hardest things to face. It's one of the hardest things to go through. I felt disconnected from my family and from God. You need to know that addictions rob you of any joy that you possibly can have or of any potential of progression that you have. You need to remember to put away childish things. Get serious. You're a man now. You can't live the way that you have been. This is where you're going to unlock a version of yourself that God has prepared for you. The man who has clarity, the man who has confidence, the man who has freedom. To close, I want to share a little journal entry that I wrote down a couple days ago. You're probably going to hear it many times from me on this channel, but it's good and I know it's going to put things into perspective for you. So for a moment, consider our Father in heaven watching his beloved child live his life and never come close to fulfilling the potential he placed within him. Oh, the life you could have had, the lives you should have touched, the people who needed you. Behold, my son has died and will never be who I sent him to become. Guys, there's a lot you got to accomplish in life. There's a lot that you have the duty to fulfill. My name is Gabriel Bowman. I appreciate you guys watching this video. If you did enjoy it, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe, of course. I'm going to be posting a video like this every day in August, so don't miss one, and I'll see you tomorrow.